Shalom. So why did God command Israel to keep the kosher dietary laws? Why should the omniscient creator of all existence care about something as seemingly insignificant as what people eat? This week's Torah portion of Parashat Shmini, beginning in Leviticus chapter 9, features many of the laws of permitted and forbidden foods. The portion begins with a description of the 8th day of the dedication ceremony of the tabernacle, which was actually Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the month of Nisan. This was a day of great joy, the first day of the divine service, the day on which the Shekhinah, the glory of the divine presence, descended upon the tabernacle. And in the midst of all this joy, Aaron's sons Nadav and Avihu brought offerings that had not been commanded by God, and they were consumed by fire. And then the entire remainder of the portion deals with the laws of foods, which animals and birds may be eaten as food and which may not be eaten, which are considered to be pure and which are impure, creatures that are an abomination, creatures that transmit contamination. It's a complicated subject, so many laws and so many details, signs for how to distinguish between the pure and the impure, and even with regard to the permitted animals, which parts may be consumed and which may not, and under which conditions. How must they be slaughtered and prepared, and which mixtures are forbidden. So there's a great deal to learn here, but why does God permit certain things as food and forbid others? So some authorities point to the forbidden foods as being detrimental to health. That's actually the position of Maimonides in his famous work, The Guide for the Perplexed. And there he states that everything forbidden by Torah to Israel is actually damaging to the body, that these things are inherently harmful, and therefore they should not be used as sources of food. Our sages also derive moral and ethical lessons and conclusions when reflecting upon the nature of the animals forbidden for consumption. For example, the permissible animals, those that chew their cud and have cloven hoods, as well as the clean birds and fish, they're of a passive nature, whereas the unclean are generally predators. So all of these factors and more reflect truths and are a part of the puzzle. Yet the bottom line, we are also aware that we cannot fully expect to comprehend fully God's reasoning in these laws, because the kosher dietary laws are among the commandments of the type known as chok, plural chukim, translated as ordinances. It's well known that this type of the mitzvot are divine decrees whose reasoning is just that, decrees made by God whose explanation is beyond the scope of human intelligence, as exemplified by the example par excellence of the chok of the red heifer. So if God commands that only these should be eaten, it should come as no surprise to find out that they are beneficial. But physical health benefits notwithstanding, kashrut, the rules of kosher eating, is a spiritual diet, manifesting the will of God, and therefore its rationale is ultimately beyond our grasp. Thus, when Midrash Tanchum opposes our very question, what does God care if we eat from these or those animals? What does he care about how we prepare our food? Does it help or hurt anything? The sages of the Midrash answer, it's all in order to reward those who keep his commandments. So open up your heart. The great Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch, in his book 19 Letters on Judaism, coins an alternative definition of chukim. He writes that these are laws of righteousness, declarations of justice towards those creatures which are subordinate to man, that is, justice towards the earth, plants and animals, or if they have become assimilated within your personality, towards your own body, mind, spirit, and soul. What does that mean? The answer can be found in Rav Hirsch's classic exposition of the philosophy of Jewish law entitled Chorev. There, Rav Hirsch explains the concept of tuma, impurity. What is this impurity associated with unclean food? He writes that just as the temple represents Israel's holy mission, just as the temple needs to be sanctified and can become desecrated by the impurity of everything that has sunken outside and beneath the human sphere, he writes, in the same way, these foods are impure and unfit for the temple of your being, your body, your heart, your spirit. And this is what he meant by those words in his definition of chukim, if they have become assimilated within your personality towards your own body and soul. He explains that if you have eaten these things, they are absorbed into your system and open up your heart in the deepest way. Rav Hirsch continues and he writes, although you may be nourished when you eat these things, the animal instinct will be aroused more strongly within you, and your body becomes more blunted as an instrument of the Spirit. Your heart, instead of being holy, instead of striving only for holiness, Holiness meaning you are being elevated above everything animal-like. Instead, your heart is drawn down to the animal and becomes more apathetic and dulled. He writes, your spirit is now faced with a fiercer battle and is less equipped for the fight. And so Torah repeatedly warns, these foods are tameh to you, do not make yourselves tameh with them, for you will become tameh through them. To become tameh, impure, means to become less capable of your holy mission to be holy people, to strive to cling to Hashem, who is holy. And Hashem's call to holiness is meant to govern over every manifestation of our lives, and thus you should preserve your body so that it would be a temple of your divine self. You should not add to it powers which will give the animal part of you a lead and pull down your spirit and heart with it, for your body is also God's. In summary, everything that is alien to your being is called by Torah detestable. So open up your heart deeper still. In other words, Rav Hirsch is telling us quite literally, you are what you eat. Eating these things simply brings you down. Eating may seem to be a trivial thing or so basic as to be a mindless activity, but we're not eating for ourselves. We are eating as guardians of our godly soul. And to eat properly and maintain our body properly is like bringing an offering in the holy temple. So listen to this. Just as an offering is brought in the service of Hashem in the external temple, so too by eating properly according to the will of God, we serve Him in our own personal temple, our body. This brings new insight to the statement of our sages in their teachings that after the destruction of the holy temple, while we cannot currently bring offerings to the altar, the table of a person at mealtime atones for him like the altar in the holy temple. There is the external divine service and the internal divine service. Ultimately, Torah is imploring us to make the right choice, the responsible choice of keeping ourselves in a fit condition for the mission with which we have been entrusted. But all of this is so different from the way that most people think about eating. Why should I be told what I can eat and what I can't eat? But it's the difference between seeing everything as being all about me, what I want, I'm at the center, and it's all about my pleasure, or the understanding that everything makes an indelible mark. Eating is a very spiritual, powerful thing with great potential for both holiness, or on the flip side, for total undoing, for a total breakdown of one's humanity. It could be ultimate subservience of spiritual over physical, or ultimate self-gratification. We're taught that every level of creation contains a divine spark that is hidden, the spiritual essence, a level of the soul of creation. This includes everything we eat. So the act of eating can potentially bring about a revelation of holiness if we elevate the divine sparks within existence, within the permitted foods that we eat, by eating with humility, with thankfulness, and recognition of God as the provider of our needs. This is eating with proper kavanah, intention. We make a blessing, thanking God, before and after everything we eat. When we eat in this manner, we peel away the layers of concealment that cover over the holy essence. And just as the physical aspect of the permitted food nourishes our body, the spiritual aspect nourishes our souls. And ultimately, Torah is warning us that the forbidden foods will corrupt our very existence, numbing us, dumbing us down, and causing us to lose ground spiritually, literally clouding the mind and dulling the heart, erecting a barrier between our souls and God. The verses towards the close of our portion are quite distinctive. For I am Hashem your God, you are to sanctify yourselves, and you shall be holy, for I am holy. And you shall not contaminate yourselves through any teeming thing that creeps on the earth. For I am Hashem your God, who elevates you from the land of Egypt to be a God to you. You shall be holy, for I am holy. In these two verses, the concept of sanctification and holiness, that of Hashem, and that for which He commands His people to aspire to, is mentioned 5 times. In Tractate Yoma of the Talmud, we learn, the Academy of Rabbi Ishmael taught, sin dulls the heart of a man. For the verse, Leviticus 11:43 reads, do not contaminate yourselves through them, lest you become contaminated through them. In a phonetic play on words, the sages state, don't read the word as vinitmetem, you will become contaminated, but as vinitamtem, you will become dull. For if a man contaminates himself a little bit, the sages say he will be led to great contamination. If he contaminates himself in this world, he will be contaminated in the next world. And so what is the meaning of the next verse? Sanctify yourselves, and you shall be holy. If a person makes a small effort to sanctify himself, he will be aided by heaven to greatly sanctify himself. And if he sanctifies himself in this world, he will be sanctified by Hashem in the next world. Thank you for watching this week's Jerusalem Lights Torah portion. We appreciate your generous support, which enables our educational outreach of Torah for everyone to continue. May we merit to serve God through every aspect of our lives. Shabbat Shalom.